Welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast that's all about real conversations for real transformation. I'm your host, Kat Pulcinelli, professional speaker, MC, and best-selling international author. Here, we tackle the tough stuff, the mud that we all have found ourselves in. We talk about the pivots, the challenges, and the victories that shape our lives and our businesses. From overcoming trauma and finding your voice to navigating life's unexpected twists, we get raw, honest, and open. You'll hear from inspiring guests who share their stories of resilience, healing, and growth. Whether it's breaking through emotional abuse, embracing self-worth, or thriving in entrepreneurship, you'll find connection, empowerment, and the tools to keep you moving forward. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and get ready for stories that hit home and conversations that make a difference. Let's get real together. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I feel like I have a really super special guest, and I'm super excited about this. So, we talk a lot about people's backgrounds and healing modalities and just kind of the pivots and failures and things like that. And I know that if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've actually heard some people talk about like somatic teachings or techniques that you can do. And I am like super excited to be able to kind of really dive into this with Krishna today. So, Krishna, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. As we kind of dive in, one of the things I always like to kind of share with people is really kind of giving them a little bit of like the background, right? Like, where did you come from? What even kind of got you into what you are doing? So I'll kind of let you fill everyone in, but tell everybody, who you are and kind of what it is you do and what kind of got you in that space.
All right, I will be concise with my kind of story that kind of got into my work, but I feel that we are all spiritual beings, and I came into this world navigating some pretty tricky spiritual lessons, like many of us. And when we are in our mother's wounds, we start receiving information from the nervous system based on like what is the stress level of the mother, like what is she going through. We receive that, right, as little beings that are growing in utero. And so my mom got pregnant with me in the 70s in the Midwest, and she grew up in a very white Catholic family, and I adored my grandparents and loved them very much. But she was 20. I was born from a one night stand, and they didn't know what to do with her. So they kicked her out of town and told her not to come back until she had a husband. And the way my mom told me the story is that she was not conscious when she got pregnant with me. And so there's that. And coming into the world, having to navigate getting kicked out of the tribe, being betrayed, being scared, not knowing where you belong, having to choose someone, not based out of love, but to just find a husband, right? She didn't choose well and
Hmm.
chose a man who was very toxic and blamed the world for his problems. And so I came into the world needing to navigate all of that. And my grandparents, bless their hearts, I love them so much, and they've passed, but I have an altar of them in my living room. And they did the best they could. But my mom, she was young, and she's also a young soul. And so she never learned how to have self-trust, how to say no, how to have boundaries, how to, accept and love herself. She was so young when that happened to her back then. And what I was taught growing up, being raised Catholic, was how to always say yes, how to try and fit in where I didn't belong, how to give and give and give to receive love and acceptance. And I know that this is hitting for a lot of people because that's how a lot of us women grew up, especially in religious upbringings. And then also, I was the only brown person in my very huge white Catholic family. And my mom never
Mm.
talked about that. Like, I remember filling out an application and not knowing which ethnicity to check. And I asked my mom, and she said, put white. So like that's the stuff that I had to grow up with. And so I had to learn how to trust who I am, being safe to be seen for who I am, saying no without guilt, that my boundaries matter, what I want and need matters. Like those are the things I had to grow into in my life. And that didn't even come soon. That didn't even come when I found acupuncture school, which was my first love in this life. And that medicine really set me on the path to being in a healthy life and relationship with myself. But it was really the work with the subconscious that I get to guide people through now that started changing my own life, because the subconscious mind is the place where we create 95% of our lives. And it's where our beliefs, our perceptions, our habits, and our behaviors are stored. So if you grew up like I did with these very contracted limiting beliefs about what you deserve and what you're worth, you're going to keep repeating your life from those places. And so in the work that I get to practice, we not only get to very easily, quickly, gently, consciously unattach from very stressful or annoying or traumatic things and go in a new direction and have a new experience, but we also get to create new subconscious programs, which truly is where we create our lives from. And so to answer your question, that's who I am. That's how I came into this work. I was literally led into the things that I guide others through by God, because these are the things, the healing that the world is asking for.
Oh my goodness. All right. First off, such an absolute beautiful story. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I like resonate with it so much myself as a Catholic, as a Catholic, and getting pregnant at 16. And
Mm,
some of the things that kind of went with that, and then ending up in an abusive relationship from 18 to 28. Like there are so many
yeah.
overlapping pieces and components, right? And it is that upbringing of like being the best but saying yes and being respectful and making sure that if you don't need to be heard, you're not heard. Like there's so many things that trickle down from the way that we are raised, and like you said, the beliefs that are ingrained in us. And what I love that you said is you talked about the subconscious. And I don't think that we talk about this enough. And this wasn't something that I learned until like 5, 6 years ago, that like, wait, there's like two different parts of us that like thinks about things. Like that's a thing. And the fact that because of that, you have the innate ability to also be able to shift it as well. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more, because I have another. Anyway, I would love to hear a little bit more of your thoughts in regards of like the subconscious and the conscious, and how that works with us and can work against us in our everyday lives, that we don't even realize it, because again, it's not something that's really taught. It's not something that's really talked about. And we are taught to just live in a go, go, go space versus in the present of what is going on with us.
Mm-hmm. Well, neuroscience is pretty new, and even psychology is pretty new as a science. It used to be a philosophy. But neuroscience, which is the only science I really kind of like, except for quantum physics, but when we create new neural pathways in the mind, that is your brain's ability to have a new experience. So you know the saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. The thing is, though, that you actually totally can, if that old dog wants to learn. And the way that I love this work so much is because it really is quick. You can be in talk therapy for 10, 15, 20 years, talking with your conscious mind, repeating the same stories over and over, which is processing,
Hmm.
but it's not important or doesn't save lives. But for those who've been in therapy for so long and they're still ticked off, they're still taking pharmaceuticals, they're still avoiding things, it's because they haven't worked in the subconscious. The subconscious part of your mind, if the visual that's often used is if you're looking at an iceberg and you can see the little top part sticking out at the top, that's the conscious part of the mind. But then the big depth underneath, the density part of it, that's your subconscious. While I don't like relating us to technology, if we were computers the keyboard is your conscious mind. That's your typing information in with your conscious mind. But the subconscious is where you hold your programs. You cannot run without those programs. And we are all programmed, every single one of us. It's just a matter of what programs you're creating your life from. And that's really the thing, because if you hit resistance a lot, if you struggle a lot, if you haven't been able to get past something, you do some work in your subconscious mind, and it's like all of a sudden you're doing the thing that you couldn't do before, or all of a sudden you don't repetitively think about that annoying or stressful or traumatic thing, past, present, or fear of the future. You can just go in a new direction in your mind and have a new experience. And we talk about what you want, like, what is it that you want to be experiencing, Kat? And we talk about stuff, and then we come up with your most favorite words and create that program in your subconscious so that it's not so hard for you to just do it. Because when you're like having to pep talk yourself and front things, and it's like so
Yep.
much work, you can just like do the work in your subconscious, and then all of a sudden you're just able to do the things you want to do.
Hmm.
That's why I love and am obsessed with the subconscious. It's why I think God led me into the work that I'm doing now. I also practice other things, but you had asked me like what is somatic, and PSYCH-K is the process that I was trained in, and it's often very somatic. And to me, that means like what is happening in the body
Mm.
to what you are thinking and your memories. So when we're doing what's called a PSYCH-K balance, which is very, very simple, we are maybe focusing on something extremely stressful that we would like to move on from until a shift happens, which could be perceived physically, emotionally, or mentally. It's often very physical for people, though, as they shift and their brain goes in a new direction. And so, in that way, that subconscious work is very somatic, because our bodies hold our stories. And so when we
Yeah.
drop into the right frameworks and we know how to inquire with what's going on in our system, our bodies will actually tell us everything that we need to know. And that is very somatic.
Hmm. And I have learned that over the past several years of how connected we really are to our bodies and how much it is screaming at us because of different things that we experience or going through, right? Those repetitive migraines, the sleepless nights, the leg pain, the like all the different things. And I think that was probably one of the really cool things that I learned of like, oh, like, so there are like things that are talking that make sense, that it is trying to tell you something. And I love that I love that you love neuroscience as well. So, like, neuroscience for me, when I started learning about it several years ago, is actually what ended up helping me in my healing journey. And I did go to therapy. I tried three different therapists. I wasn't really a fan of it. I did feel like I was just talking in repetitive motions and like nothing was being solved. Now, again, it works for some people, so we're not saying that it's not helpful at all. It's great to have a sounding board and stuff like that. And when there are some traumatic experiences and things like that, there's a lot more deeper arching items that might need to be addressed that for me personally were not when I was in therapy. I felt like I was labeled, which at that time I was told I had PTSD, I had anxiety, and I was told I had been brainwashed. And I was like, fantastic, that solves my problems. So I really dove into like the psychology and the neuroscience specifically. Like I loved learning that we have the capability to reprogram the neurons that are connected and disconnect from whatever belief we have been taught, right? Because ultimately, everything that we learned growing up is because of someone else or something that we have been a part of, and that becomes what we believe. And I thought it was like the most fascinating to realize that you had the power to shift that belief and change it to something completely different. Now, the physical piece, I think, is what actually made me a little uncomfortable because I was used to keeping everything kind of, like bottled up and, trying to be centered. And so like breath work was great and I did a lot of things like that. But when it came to like some of the physical things, like for instance, I was told one time by my spiritual coach, like, you just need to just scream into the pillow, like, let it out. I was like having a crying fit. I was trying to hold it together. And I was so uncomfortable with like being told to do that. Like, I think, and I love your expertise on this too. Like, I think because we're taught to stay small or not show big emotions in certain ways. And I love that you talked about this at the beginning. So I'd love for you to kind of dive into this as well, is you said, it doesn't have to be complicated. Like, there are simple ways to be able to release and let go. And again, that's not something that I think clicks for us because most of our society, right, is taught like you have to work hard to get through things. Things don't come easily. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, there's all these different things that make it sound like in order to get through anything, whether it's healing or just growing or being in business or whatever the case may be, that it has to be difficult. And I have
Mm,
found it really interesting to realize how simple things can be that help us shift the way that we see things.
yeah. And I'm really glad you picked up on that because that's the exact reason why I was attracted to the modality of PSYCH-K because you're not unconscious or in an altered state like you might be in hypnotherapy. In some ways, it's similar to EMDR, if people knew what that was, because we do like some crossing of the midline of the body for people who know what EMDR is. And with EMDR, you maybe like track with your eyes across the body
Hmm.
to help you unattach from stressful things. But then being able to create those new perceptions in the subconscious again, so that you can just all of a sudden be doing it and you don't have to give yourself the pep talks and you don't have to work so hard. I, like you, don't want to be in a bunch of talk therapy. It's not that I haven't done that before and haven't had lovely therapists. It's just I'm like ready to move on now. I consciously and intellectually understand why things are, but having this work is like, oh, cool. I don't have to be stuck in that. I can actually like clear it from my body. And if we have trauma, in our body, which everyone has trauma, it doesn't just go away. And even if you're talking about it with a talk therapist, again, you might consciously understand, but if your body does not have a way to release that, it will stay in there until you have, the right, and it comes out at like inopportune times, usually when you're not
Always.
expecting it. Just when you're not expecting it, you're like normal, and then all of a sudden you're not normal. And that's what actually happened to me in my one and only panic attack, which led me down a path of studying the nervous system and the vagus nerve, which was great because that's then what came into my office is all these patients, because then it was COVID and we needed to figure out how to like trust ourselves in the unknown and feel safe in the present moment and like all these things that people were all of a sudden just not able to do.
Hmm.
But yes, you do not have to work, and it does not have to be arduous and painful and enduring to heal. You can actually just let it be gentle, which is actually deep. Gentle is deep and it can be so elegant and, yeah, simple, the same. Does not have
Hmm.
this dramatic thing. Yelling into the pillow is awesome, and I highly suggest that. It opens up your throat and your voice. But this work that I guide breath work as well, so I'm glad that you've done that. But yeah, I just want to offer that to any listener, no matter what you've gone through. It doesn't mean that it's going to take 30 years to heal just because you've had 30 years of feeling awful or being upset at your parents,
Mm.
living with
Hmm.
a shame. Like you can actually have a session to 10 sessions, which is not that many, and like work the whole life that you live in. So yeah, that's often what I speak about is conscious therapy versus talk versus subconscious therapy.
Hmm. And I,
And
I love that. I have a question on the somatic piece, but I want to share this really quick because I was reading this article. My goodness, I wish I could remember what it was the other day, but I found it really fascinating. And we were just talking about, screaming into the pillow and how you highly recommend it. And it was really interesting because it was talking about um, I want to say back in the 15th century, kind of when medical science and like doctors started to kind of become a thing. And what was interesting is it was talking about how back then, when someone was going through a procedure or having an amputation or whatever was being done, that there was actual science showing that those that screamed and released actually were able to heal
Yeah.
quicker than those that tried to hold it in. And then as we kind of progress into society, we are taught to hush those big emotions and then we wonder why things kind of like stay in the body. And I just thought that was really fascinating that I was like, "Oh my God, like we actually knew, we were actually taught this and then somehow it was kind of shoved into the box and told that's not true and that's not real. But like we actually have science to show the difference between those that like let the things out and let
Yeah.
go of it,
Mhm.
which is so interesting to me. And so, as we talk about, some of the somatic practices and things like that, can you kind of explain or kind of give people an idea like what does that even mean? Because I feel like there are things that are online and starting to show of like people doing certain events or retreats and stuff, and they talk about this, but I don't know if people really actually understand like what is a somatic practice? What are these modalities? What does it mean?
Well, I guide people through what I call somatic meditations to help train the nervous system. So I'll just give an example of how I guide a person through it, which I think is more helpful than just like defining it.
Yes,
Um,
please.
yeah, it would be for my brain. I'll just name that. Um, So like say, and I can take you through one right now. You don't even have to say it out loud, but it's like connecting again, connecting what your body is experiencing with what your mind is believing. Okay. Because your body's always responding to what you're thinking and believing. So the one I take people through often, which is a neuroplasticity practice, is just closing your eyes, taking a couple of breaths, and just start to notice what you feel. And then just name it in your own mind. Name what you feel, sensation, a thought, both. And if it's hard to describe, you could just say pleasant or unpleasant. And then notice where you feel that in your body. And then you just ask yourself, can I be with this right now? And you're not trying to change anything or talk yourself out of it or fix it. You're just naming your experience and then staying with yourself. From here, go to your mind and notice what you're believing. Like as you feel that tightness in your shoulders or your heart racing or nausea, like what are you believing? And when you have that, then you ask yourself, do I 100% know that that is true? Can I say with 100% certainty that that is the truth? And usually the answer is no, but it's totally fine if it's yes. Yes or no is your answer. From here, then you just ask yourself, what do I need right now? And so this is where it's neuroplasticity, because you're taking your focus off of what is probably a belief that's not true, and you're instead focusing on what you need. And that's what you want to stay with.
Oh, I just want to give everybody a moment to kind of pause and think about that. One, that's absolutely beautiful. And I think what's really beautiful about this is the fact of the simplicity. Because again, we are taught things are supposed to be hard. We are taught that to get to a place, to achieve something, to change something, there's the difficulty within it. And don't get me wrong, right? Like going through some of my healing journeys, some of those things were difficult, but I don't believe that what was the healing, I think it was the letting go of the things that were the familiar and then stepping into the new, right? Which then, can bring in the fears, and that unknown space that I think that we get ourselves caught up in a
Yeah.
lot of the times. And I think that that is where we feel like things are difficult
Mm.
when in reality it's being able to meet yourself in that space and like you just did addressing those questions or addressing that issue or addressing that emotion and like you just said earlier being gentle with yourself asking that question um you know for someone that, let's say, just did that exercise with us and they're like, oh my gosh, I mean, my mind was racing. I was having a hard time calm down to focus on the one thing. And I don't know if what I, was thinking about was true or not. I feel like I'm in between. What is something that you could tell them or might help them in this practice? Is obviously we understand that like this is something you would want to do on a regular basis. One time is not going to fix it all. One time's not may not necessarily be the answer. But what would it be for those that are wanting to try this but feel like they're already failing at it?
Your answer, if you're not sure, is no. No, it's not 100% true. And so then again, you're focusing on what you need. How many people can raise their hands and say that they're used to focusing on what's wrong? It's like everyone. It's very natural because that's what our nervous systems learn to do to gauge safety
Mm,
and to stay guarded, usually with your shoulders up in your ears, right? So tight, trying to just like be ready and not, a lot of people are afraid of failing, or they're afraid of being alone, or they're afraid of not being seen. And so that's usually what makes us go into these ways with our body that are very stressful, but actually we're believing things that are not true. So for your question, just focus on what you want. Start there. And a lot of times I ask people this, Kat, and they don't know. So ask yourself, what do I want? Or if you're having an uncomfortable experience, check in. Do not crap talk yourself and try to dismiss it, but instead acknowledge, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm feeling overwhelmed. My shoulders are so tight. What do you need right now? That's where you really want to start putting your focus. As so many people are empathic, we learn again to gauge our safety based on what other people are doing when we're growing up. And that's what empathy is. And instead, we want to empathy is like feeling other people's experience, right? So we want to practice
hmm
bringing the awareness back to us and what we need right now. And I just want to name that that is not selfish. It is loving of yourself and to your relationships because you're not meant to just enmesh with other people's energy. If you have to return to your own energy with some breaths or a time out or a little meditation or whatever it is, that's really better for everyone. So that's a lot of what I get to teach is energetic boundaries, nervous system regulation, and then helping people release that stress and that trauma from their bodies, go in a new direction. And then, like, what do you want? Let's talk about that and then create those subconscious programs.
Mm, I love that. And you said, taking that moment for yourself to kind of self-regulate or give yourself that space. Because like you said, it doesn't do anyone good, right? And ultimately it ends up coming out on a spouse or a kid or, a family member. One of the practices that I learned early on was um, things that brought my attention or my focus back to center. And for me, a lot of times that is either feeling something or smelling something. That's like, those are my two go-tos. So I generally have some form of, like I have one right now. I have rocks. I have rocks all over the place that I can roll around or just kind of bring me back into that space. Or I have smells. I'm a huge person on smells. So I have a specific oil that for me is extremely calming. And so if I've been in a stressful situation, or there's just, I feel like, right, meetings were like boom, 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 boom. And I finally get a space to breathe.
Mm.
Before I jump into the next thing, I take that 2 minutes, right, to just breathe in the oil and focus back on that. And it really is interesting the way like you talked about earlier, like it just something so simple that allows you to shift
Mhm.
so easily,
Mhm.
instead of getting caught up in the go go go, which we seem to find ourselves in. And I think that that can be helpful in also giving space for you to recognize what it is that you do want in that moment, right? I feel like you're creating a space of your own safety. Like you were talking about earlier, a lot of us do live more in a survival state, or a being hyper aware state, especially if you've been through things, right? And I think this kind of comes back to, you were talking about the things that happened while you were in the womb. How important is that when it comes to what we may potentially be doing today?
Everything, everything. And sometimes people are like, how do I know if I need subconscious work? We all do, for one. Second, you can take a look at your life and notice where you're struggling. Notice where you're stuck. Notice where you feel stressed. Notice where you feel like you're repeating undesirable behavior or patterns. Perfect work for the subconscious. And then let's look at again what you want, because we all know what we don't want. Everyone, I could ask anyone, what do you not want? And they'll name 80 things, right? Sometimes I ask people what they want and they don't know. And they have to sit there
Hmm.
and think about it. And so my favorite work is helping people really step into their limitless creative potential to create your life that you want to be in.
Hmm. Now,
And
earlier you said, it's okay to be selfish, right? When you're talking about things that you want for you.
And
How
I don't think that's
important, go
selfish. I
ahead.
think that putting the awareness on what you want and having that matter is not selfish. It's actually best for everyone. If you have a child and you're modeling to them how to give and give and give all the time and never do anything for yourself, is that selfish? To all of a sudden, like, show them how to take a time out, show them how to take a nap, show them that you need to scream into your pillow or take a bath. That's not selfish. You need to show them that, like, this is important, that you check in with yourself. What do you need right now? My daughter
Hmm.
used to get really irritated with me because I would ask her, like, what do you need? And she didn't know. And I had to keep asking her. And you know what? She's going to be 17 in a couple weeks. I'm not saying she doesn't give me attitude, but she is so much better at honoring her needs, you know?
Hmm.
Um, I'm really proud of that.
I love that. And my boys are 21 and 17, and it's interesting to think of the way I used to model myself as a parent and how I have modeled myself as a parent over the last several years, and the shift that it has brought for them. And I love that you said the word model, because I feel like growing up, I always heard the term, do as I say, not as I do.
Mm,
And I don't think, at least me growing up, I never realized that every time that I was telling my kids to do something, if I wasn't actually doing the same thing, right, modeling that behavior, then that's not what they were picking up on. They were picking on up exactly what it was, right, that we were doing. And I kind of had this epiphany a few years ago when I realized that I grew up in a family where, and I love my parents, but like we didn't really see them argue. There weren't any like screaming matches. From my understanding as a kid, like we had like the perfect life, like the perfect family, and all the things. And that created a lot of perfectionism in
mm,
me as an adult. And then what I ended up modeling for my kids for years was that I was the perfect parent.
mhm,
Mom doesn't get upset. Mom can handle her shit. Mom is always doing this. We always keep moving forward. And then I realized when I started on my own healing journey how my oldest one, who was becoming a teenager at that time, was starting to feel the same way. And so I really had to look at myself and then start to teach my kids in a way that, like you said, it lets them know that it's okay, right? Like I have conversations on a regular basis when my youngest one gets angry and he's like, I'm a terrible person. And I'm like, and why would you be a terrible person? Well, because I'm so mad. And I'm like, and that's normal. We all get angry. But it's really interesting, again, how we are not taught to be okay to feel those feelings and how the way that you present yourself to those that are closest to you is also the way that they're going to present themselves as well.
Yeah. And I try to say this to my daughter as well as create it, because where we struggle the most, and thank God I have PSYCH-K for my parental triggers, but she is an empath and she's psychic and she's just really really tuned in. And so it's a problem if I'm like in my depths of thought and I might just be contemplated, but she might,
Hmm.
what's wrong? Why are you down in the dumps? And I'm like, I'm not down in the dumps. I'm quiet and contemplative, right?
Hmm.
Allow me my own experience. And she's still working on that one. And that's where we usually get in trouble, because then I might react to her. Right. And so we have a therapist maybe every 6 weeks that we adore. And that's what we work with, is like communication and those moments where you're getting into the like how to pause that behavior and then like maybe take a little time out and come back to
Hmm.
it. Um, but I can't remember what you asked. But it's not selfish
Yeah.
to honor your needs. It's really not. And that is like, those are new beliefs. None of us really grew up with that. None of us did. We were
Yeah.
taught to people please and to say yes and to give. And that's how you earned love and acceptance.
Hmm.
So, what if you had the belief that you deserve love and acceptance exactly as you are, that it's safe to be exactly as you are? And I try to, I'll tie it back now, I remember. I try to tell my daughter, like, it's totally fine, whatever mood you're in. I want to create a safe space for that, if you're disrespectful, you're going to probably get me pissed off. If I deserve it, it's one thing and I'll
Yeah.
reflect on behavior. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I think she's good at naming. A lot of times she'll just like be reactive or pissy because she's 17. But then if I
right.
just allow her space, I tell you what, every time she comes back later and is like, I understand where you're coming from.
Yep.
Instead
Yeah.
of me having to micromanage her pissiness or her mood swing, you know what I mean? Just like allow
Hmm.
her experience, let her have her process. It's fine.
I think that that's super important in not only with our kids, but in relationships in general, is knowing that we do not have to have a response in the moment. Right. One of the things that we really started doing in my household, because we're Italian and we get heated really quick, and was totally includes me, was I had to learn to be okay to say, okay, I'm at the breaking point and I'm about to lose my shit, right? And I don't think it's because of you. I think it's just the situation. So let's take five and let's come back. But what was really cool was as I started making that a boundary for me, I also then saw my kids start to do the same thing. Like they were starting to recognize when they were in that space. So like my oldest one, when we are having conversations and we're talking lessons or life and things like that, there have been times where he's like, I can't with you anymore. Like I'm to the breaking point and I have to be okay with, okay, take a break and let's come back to that. And
Right.
I think that that is so important for us to have in our relationships with our kids, with our spouses, with our families, is you do not have to have a response in that absolute moment. Like it is okay to pause, which I know is awkward for a lot of us, but there is so much more space and ability to think, like you said, instead of that reactiveness.
Mhm.
Because my youngest one's 17, right? And there are times where he comes home and he's pissed off at the world of things that are going on and he just about all the things. And I just let him have his peace. And it's the same thing. He'll come back like 10, 15 minutes later and he's like, my bad. Like, I wasn't mad at you. It was because of this. And I'm like, I appreciate that. But like, there's an acknowledgement that comes with that, which is super cool because again, I wasn't taught that at
Mhm.
all. It just, if you got ticked, you were in trouble. And if you lost your temper, you were in trouble. And so you were supposed to pull those
Oh,
emotions down and stay quiet.
yes. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna plug in my computer so it doesn't die.
Real world issues. This is what happens, people.
I know. I had it plugged in and then like whatever cord is in there was not working. Yay.
I heard it. There we go.
Speaking of taking a pause and honoring your needs, so you
There you
don't
go.
lose connection.
How perfectly timed was that?
My daughter would be making fun of me right now because I'm laughing at my own jokes, which I love to do.
Oh my gosh, I do that all the time. Or I have my own little moments in my head and I find myself giggling out loud and I'm like, was anybody paying attention to this?
I do that all the time. And I talk to myself.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I'm the person whose face gives it away that she's talking to herself because I will be having the conversation and be like, oh wait, that was internal.
I love it. Uh,
Oh, goodness. I think this is the beauty of being human instead of trying to fit into the societal boxes that we have been told for so long that we are supposed to act or be or do in a specific way. Like to me, I think I find more joy, peace, and fulfillment in things like this versus oh my gosh, okay, well that just happened. We have to cut that out. Nobody can see that that happens because we want to make sure it's the way it's supposed to be. Like there's such a stress relief on like just letting things be in life instead of making the small things such a huge issue.
yeah. And authenticity is really like the highest vibration. So just like you said, allowing things to be what they actually are. And it's beautiful that you seem to have, you know, started to outgrow some of the perfectionism, or the perfectionism has like turned itself down a little bit in its volume.
Definitely. It's
Yeah.
definitely turned its and that was a real struggle, but I think that that's right. That was that conscious decision of recognizing the pattern and making the decision to want to do something different because the cycle was not getting me anywhere. And I think that that is the beauty of where we are at in any point of our journey is we always have that space to be able to do that, to change, to see the patterns, to shift it. Like you said in the very beginning, teaching a dog an old dog new tricks. Like it doesn't matter where you are at in the stages of your life, you always have the ability to be able to do that, which to me is really cool to know that like we don't have to get old and senile and just like block everything out. Like we really can constantly teach ourselves something new all the time.
Yes, and that really does prevent things like neurocognitive disorders like dementia, like
Mm,
Alzheimer's. Um, so yes, to your point, doing new things, going in a new direction, say even to the grocery store, instead of doing the same thing that you do all the time, is really good for your brain. And yes, our
mhm.
are amazing and we can use them so much more than we are.
Yeah. And speaking of, you're talking about going to the grocery store and stuff. I actually heard someone one time that was talking about this where they said that because they understand that we get into these like habitual modes, right? Where like you find yourself driving home and you're like, why am I going that direction? I was supposed to be going over here. And so they said that what they do on a regular basis is they change it up, right? So like if I drove to work the same way for a few days, I take like a slightly different path just to keep my brain present and aware versus allowing it to just habitually work like the machine that it is. And I think that that is such a really cool thing to think about because again, it's so easy for us to get into the daily routine, the daily grind, and then I do think that that is when we go from, oh my gosh, I had a hard day to holy crap, how is it the end of the year? Because you didn't make the moments to pause, to be present. And so it really did feel like that because you weren't consciously aware of what was going on. So anyway, Krishna, I could talk to you forever about this and like totally dive into so many aspects of it. But I love what it is that you are teaching people, and I love the simplicity and the gentleness of how you were teaching it. So if somebody was um, interested in learning more about you or connecting with you, like how can they find you? How can they be a part of your world?
Mm. I'm pretty old-fashioned. You can just find me on my website, and you are welcome to email or text. I love connecting. I'm just not always online. So I share in Instagram stories quite a bit when I feel like it, but I don't post regularly.
Not a
And
bad thing.
and then maybe on LinkedIn, people find me or find content and are like ready to work with me. But yeah, it's just my name everywhere on the internet. And I have some free stuff on my website. You know, there are some meditations. There's a free
Oh,
practice there. I'm working on an app right now so that people can just like have a self-hypnosis meditation for
oh, I
self-worth.
love that.
Yeah, or a breathwork meditation to clear shame or anger, or a somatic meditation to work with your nervous system. So I'm working on that because I have so much content. And then one thing we didn't talk about, which is the other framework that I really feel lit up guiding people through, is something called internal family systems, which is another formal mental health framework that is very gentle and so beautiful and compassionate, and still putting even on the app like some IFS meditations. It's gonna
Oh, I love that. Oh, you're gonna have to keep me posted. I am so excited about that. And of course, we'll make sure we have all the information on the show notes and everything. So we'll make it super simple for you guys to be able to connect with her. So Krishna, as we kind of come to a close, and again, thank you so much for sharing all of it. And I thank you so much for giving such a beautiful example of what it is that you do and how simple it can be to really kind of be present in the moment with yourself to see what it is that you actually need. I think I love it when people present that versus just trying to explain it. Is there anything that you would like to leave the audience with, or anything you feel called to make sure that you share before we come to a close?
Yeah, I just want you to know that no matter what you've experienced or where you're at within your life and yourself right now, that you are definitely worthy of the best that this love and life has to offer for you, and that you're really a limitless creator. And your potential is amazing, and you can access that pretty quickly. It doesn't have to be, like I said, this long path and journey to create the life you want. Like, you can actually have it right now.
Which I think is so beautiful. It excites me every time that I learn new things like this, and again, learning how simple the world can really be when we have been taught that things are supposed to be so difficult. So again, I can't thank you enough, Krishna, for being a part of the podcast today. Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with everyone here. To everybody else that's out there, I hope that you got some amazing takeaways. I'll go back to the beginning and redo that beautiful small session that Krishna did for us. I think that you should take that and save that. It's such an easy tool, as she said, to be able to utilize and be able to come back to the present, to know what it is that you really need and really be able to kind of see which one of those beliefs, oh, we lost her, which one of those beliefs that we do really truly believe and which ones that deep down we understand may not quite align with us. So use this as your moment and your space. And until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. Catch you later. Thank you so much for tuning in to Real Chat with Kat today, where real stories meet real solutions. If you love today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review on Apple, and share this with someone who may also need to hear this as well. Let's also keep the conversation going. Follow me on socials at The Lotus Effect, connect with our incredible guests, and remember, you are never alone. Your story matters, and you have the ability and the power to rewrite it. You always have a choice. Until next time, stay strong, stay inspired, and keep showing up as the incredible, unstoppable